You're listening to the Impact Driver Podcast, a production of the Climbing Business Journal, where we explore the ideas, people, and pressures shaping the route setting industry. I'm your host, Holly Chen. I am a route setter, journalist, and contributing writer at the CBJ. Today's episode is brought to you by Rooney, Cascade Specialties, Trango, Approach, and Onsite. Hey folks, it's Holly here. We are doing something new this year. The conversations you love are still here, but we are introducing a new way to share them. This season, the Impact Driver podcast steps into video. I've always wanted to share the human moments that don't always make it onto audio. Facial expressions, our pets wandering into frame, and when we awkwardly mime climbing movement in front of the camera. So if you're listening from wherever you get your podcast, find a chance to bop on over to YouTube for the full experience. Welcome back to another year of the Impact Driver podcast. Same conversations, just now on camera. But before we begin, a word from our sponsors who make the Impact Driver podcast possible. Check out our show notes for discount offers. This episode is brought to you by Rooney. Out of Norway, Rooney makes chalk and apparel for climbers, inspired by YouTuber Magnus Midtmo. Learn more at rooney.com. Hey Zoe, where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Durham, North Carolina.
And you mentioned that you had just finished a setting day. How was the day? Tell me about it.
The day was pretty relaxing. It was like a rainy day. So we did a couple routes and we finished at a pretty reasonable time. We had some cool routes put up at one of our locations in North Raleigh. So, yeah.
Love that. I love days that end on a reasonable time. It's like, sometimes that means like everything. Just like, yay, I get the evening today. I'm not super.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
Zoe, you and I are going to talk about something that I am very, very excited to, and I've actually been trying to get someone to talk to me about this for a while, which is how emotional route setting can be. When I talk to non-route setters, they often think that route setting is just about, putting plastic on walls, and it's maybe about athleticism or understanding of movement and creativity. And yeah, that is very true, that it is what route setting is. But I also tell them that route setting is a lot more emotional than people expect because, we do the job because we love climbing, and sometimes it starts to blur. Our self-worth becomes tied to the grades we climb, the comps we set for. So I'm kind of wondering, for you, what part of this job feels the most emotional, the most human to you?
I think it's kind of like the product that we put on the wall. Like that sparks a lot of emotion more. Like, I know it bleeds into like a lot of like it's basically like we created something out of scratch. Like there's like a blank canvas and you're just creating something out of like nothing. Whether you've been assigned certain holds or colors or something, grades, you have to think about like from the bottom up, or if you are a setter that sets from the top bottom, either one. So it's like, which I think that itself is kind of like you put a lot of thought into that, and then you kind of like come out with it like, this is something that I can look into or like be prideful of the quality and product that I've put, because you put a lot of time into it.
I agree. It's like the vulnerability of showing someone something you've created, right? Like it bleeds into every part of life, even if it's just like, oh, I made a new dish and I want my partner or my friend to try it. Like if it sucks, I'm gonna be a little sad about it because I created it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me about kind of the emotions that you might feel in a normal setting day, from everything from like getting there with your cup of coffee to wrapping up and putting the barriers away.
I guess like starting off with, we usually be like a cup of coffee or something to like,
Wake you up.
Exactly. Usually I do like matcha lattes. And it's just like, okay, you get in. Usually it depends on where we are. We have like a pretty big selection of walls usually. So we rotate, of course, and every day is a little bit different for us. Just like in the triangle, we have so many gyms in such a small area that we rotate between the areas. So we don't know where we're setting. Um, like most of the time, it's like, okay, this is a new place. Okay, and then could you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. Just kind of talking about the emotion that you feel through the setting day. It sounds like maybe you start with a little bit of uncertainty of like, ooh, where am I setting today? What terrain
Yeah.
am I setting on? You don't have
Yeah.
like a set rotation schedule.
Yeah, like so we do have a rotation schedule. It's
Oh,
just more
gotcha.
like we might have like because we rotate so often, we might skip a rotation where we think we are, and then we're like, oh, we're actually like past that. So like
Yeah.
it could be like kind of very random. We've gotten better at like assigning the names of these walls for us. So we're like, okay, we can prep for this. Like we had like a boulder day recently, and it was like we call it the Kraken. So like it's like the belly of a beast, like it's all overhung. So we just like we can mentally prep for that and be like, okay, it's gonna be a hard day, so like don't wear yourself out. Make sure you have a lot of food and snacks, and then um, and just bring the energy. So
Gotcha. When you first started as a route setter, what, 7, 8 years ago,
mhm.
what was an emotional aspect of the job that surprised you?
um, I think like managing frustration. You Because you have to work so closely with everybody, you just like some of that emotion can leak out onto like the way you attach yourself to your product. And so like the way you can go about things, I would say like the frustration of like say like someone changing something, or like, which is okay most of the time. I think being pretty open-minded about it. But because like not a lot of people teach you how, or like it's like a lot of communication. So like if you don't have the formative communication skills, it's like very hard to like communicate with your team about like especially when you're new and you don't know like the lingo, or like the words that people use. Maybe you don't even know the holds that you're like touching and everything. So like it's like very, you get dropped into an environment that's very like jarring. Like it's almost like jump into the deep end of the pool, and then
Push you down the
you're
black diamond
yeah,
slope before you
yeah,
even learn the
exactly.
greens. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about now? Now that you've been in the industry for coming up on a decade, is there
Mhm.
anything, emotion wise that still surprise you on a day-to-day basis?
Um, I think the communication still like I think people still are learning how to communicate with everybody. And so like being able to like iterate or articulate the things that you want and don't want. Or and also being like open-minded to and receptive to change. People are so like dialed down on their ideas that they don't see like a broader picture, I think. Depending on what you're setting for, like you're setting for like commercial sets, like a regular gym, or like if you're setting for a comp, for instance, like a QE would be completely different. So like the member, like the basis of who you're setting for and why you're doing it, what you're testing. But when you're doing it for like a general basis of like regular members, you have to like think so far and so wide, like out of this box, that you're like, okay, well, these are all the options that you can do, but also this is maybe one facet of what you would do. So I think encompasses it. But
I agree. I think that when you talk about big picture and, different members and audiences,
mhm,
it's really hard to, especially in a job like setting where there isn't a strict rule book, it's really
mhm,
hard to dial like, oh, this is appropriate for the QE, but maybe
right,
not appropriate for the member base. Or this is appropriate
right,
for the citizens open round, maybe not
right,
quite appropriate for your average, set.
right.
It's hard to dial that, and like every gym, every community has its own expectations around it, and
Exactly.
yeah, communication on that expectations is huge part of the job. This episode was brought to you by Cascade Specialty. Since 1999, Cascade Specialty has installed and refurbished top quality flooring for both rope and bouldering areas. Learn more at cascadespecialty.com. Um, if you look at, the ideal setting day, can you tell
Mhm.
me about the ideal mindset or the emotional state that you might want to be in before the ropes even go up, before the ladders even come out? Like, describe the perfect mental state for me.
I think some some form you'd probably go in with like a clear mind, whether you're psyched on a specific idea or like or specific hold set. I'd s- I would say like you want to go in with like pretty like happy go lucky. I know not everybody could do that, but like if you don't go in with like dread and you just like open to any part of positive vibes, like any like I don't know, it's sunny outside, something to just like help with like the day, but
Mm-hmm.
like not bring the day down because like like your emotions plus the the way you present yourself when you go into a space, it's like it can bleed onto other people. And
I
so
agree. Yeah,
you want to stay positive, and like if you are already dreading the day, people are gonna feel that. And
they
so
sense that. Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly, and you don't want to bring everybody else down if they were already on like a higher level. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also think that that kind of positivity can also have a reverse effect on you. Let's say you're
mhm,
waking up and something hurts. You're tired. You're not feeling super creative, and if you
mhm,
kind of put that smile on your face, and not to
yeah,
say that we are kind of going to the toxic positivity vibe, because it's okay
right,
to be vulnerable, but sometimes when I tell myself that, oh, I'm tired, this workout, this setting day is gonna suck, it
right,
does actually end up feeling pretty miserable. But
right,
if I tell myself, like, okay, a bad workout is better than no workout,
yeah,
like,
exactly, yeah,
just having a boulder exist and then tweaking
mhm,
it to what it needs to be is better than not trying at all and just slamming up some left, right boring thing.
right,
So, like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. I love you bring that up because I think that it's something that I try my best to remind myself to do on every days,
Mhm.
even if I'm feeling kind of icky.
Right. It's like I think it just like makes the day go a little bit nicer. Like just picking something positive about it, like, and it could be something small. It doesn't have to happen until you get to the gym or something, like it could be, or it could even be like I have my cup of coffee, that's plenty enough, this will get me through the day, and like that's okay. So
Yeah.
nothing else should hopefully not hinder your mood.
I
So
love that. And I also think that, us bringing up the vulnerability part, because creative work is kind of vulnerable, right? It invites
right,
attachment to your work. I'm the same with my routes and my writing and anything that I might create, like you were saying before, with like creating with your bare hands, because any climb that we put up is going to invite public opinion, not just from the
exactly,
members, but also from our fellow coworkers and outsetters. Like, people will either love it, they could celebrate it, they could avoid it because they hate slopers or they hate pinches,
right,
or they could flash it in front of you and go like, "Well, that's not V8," or
exactly.
some comment like that. And feedback can sometimes feel personal when it really isn't. So, and I think it really comes to the core of what I want to ask you is that, do you think route setting and ego and these two kind of things are kind of inescapable? Like, route setting has ego and we just have to learn to manage it, or that there is a way to kind of escape that self-centered approach to route setting?
Um, I think there is always going to be a type of ego that goes into setting. I think that just like is the way it, I think ego has its way to breed like creativity in certain aspects. And I think that can be very beautiful in its own way. But I think the ways that I think ego has a very bad rep of like, like people are like unhealthy way. They have a unhealthy attachment to ego, and so like when we talk about ego, it's very like framed in a network of like negativity,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um and which kind of sucks because like like you want to be prideful of like whether it is your product or your work or even like you worked really hard to get to the place that you climb. Like you take pride in that. But I think it's really hard to like separate them um completely. Like there's I don't think in a world within any setting is going to be able to like separate it like completely out. One, it's like it doesn't go with like one or the other. It like they both have to be able to like mesh, but like be able to intertwine and like work together in like a small way. And even if you're trying to not make it egocentric, you can at least be mindful of like the way your ego or like ego is being integrated into your setting. So
I agree. When you say that ego is generally framed in a negative light, and I would say that 100%. You can
mhm.
say like, oh, I don't really want to work with that person because they have a
Right,
huge ego.
right,
Or someone says, I don't want to change this, and you think to yourself, that's their ego getting in the way. They don't want to change
right,
something.
right.
But you're saying that there is kind of maybe a positive part to the ego that we face in route setting is that it can give birth to something really beautiful. Can you expand on that?
Right.
Or what are you thinking?
I think like I think in certain aspect like ego could like you could have like an outlandish idea and like maybe that's just like your ego is like so high up there that you're like I can do this move. I mean we see it in competition setting right now, like like we never thought about like certain movements that could also be incorporated into like climbing. And climbing has been going into like a very like almost like a parkour but integrated like different skill set kind of climbing.
Yeah, 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 I
And so like
agree.
you're like pushing the climber into like different bubbles of like but it bleeds into like different fields and facets of like worlds that might correlate with climbing, but they're not necessarily climbing. So I think the way that it's manifesting the way it's like manifesting like an idea, but you're just like you want to like how do you say it? Um mm,
Maybe you want to lean into the confidence sometimes.
yeah, I think it'll like you're able to push some ideas maybe that you never thought about. So whether it is outlandish, it could be something crazy, but also it could be also unique in its own way. So I think that is where like it could push into like networks that you never seen before or something along those lines. So like it's different. I think like that leading into something different is okay. Um, if it's crazy, maybe you can always give it a thought, and then if it doesn't work out, that's fair. But I think it's always like okay to like maybe test it. If it's crazy, don't do it. But,
I like that you bring that up. I really like that you bring that up because, I mean, in this kind of framework, innovation comes from a little bit of an ego. And
right,
sometimes that's okay because it does give us really cool stuff. Like if we look at
right,
the highest levels of competition setting or innovations in climbing tools like the curved ice axe that allowed people to climb
right,
steeper ice, or the lightweight stuff that allows people to go light and fast in alpine.
right,
A lot of these are outlandish ideas when they first
right,
came out, right? People were saying,
right,
well, that's not real climbing,
right,
when the parkour and high risk moves are being introduced. But then all of a sudden, you look around, you're like, well, that's most of the moves in a World Cup and most of
yeah,
the moves
exactly,
testing the best athletes in the country.
yeah.
So that has to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like very cool that we integrate a lot of different facets of like different realms of things, and then like you're testing people in their general basis of like what their knowledge of climbing is and what it could be. I think it's like very much like it could be something like this. Why not try to make it it could, like, like you could make it something like this, or we can always stick to something a little bit more like in the box, like what we know climbing to be, but like being able to like expand and like, well, climbing could also be something like this, and then you can expand on that versus like it might be a little boring to stay in this box, which is okay. Some people like to stay
Sometimes
in
you
the
gotta.
box.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's okay to have a little bit of both.
Yeah, a good
So,
balance always kind of rounds someone out. That actually leads me to the next question that I've been thinking about is just I think the concept kind of comes from, for me, you don't know what you don't know, right? Like
mhm,
when we're talking to newer setters and they have these outlandish ideas, but maybe
mhm.
they don't know that this idea has actually been tried 5,000
Right.
times on
Right.
this exact wall with these exact holds, and every time
Yeah.
it has failed. And that doesn't mean that this new setter shouldn't try this idea again, because you don't know if it the
Right.
5,000 the first time that this
Right.
idea will actually work, right?
Exactly.
But I think it kind of comes to the question is like how do you start to know what you don't know, right? Like let's
Mm.
say I say I want to set a skate move right here, and Zoe,
Right.
you're like, Holly, I've been at this gym for 10 years. I'm telling you, this ain't gonna go here. Not with these holds,
Right.
not with this
Right.
member base, like something like that. How do
Mhm.
I begin to tell the difference between I have an idea that I want to make it work. I'm very attached to it. It's my creative expression,
Right.
and knowing that maybe this time is the ego talking. Now I don't want to listen to Zoe right now. That
Mm.
escape move won't work because my ego is saying, "Yes, it will. It will
It
work."
will work. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think giving space to be able to explore that, even if it's a failed like experiment, is okay. I think newer setters are they're most likely always go for like dinos or like something they saw on like the Olympics or
Instagram.
like a World
Yeah.
Cup, or yeah, exactly. That move looked super fancy. I want to replicate it.
Yeah.
And whether we can replicate that or not, to the certain degree that they did, they probably are doing it in some facet of like they know the intended beta and they're gonna do it exactly like that. And we, if it was open to the general public, it's probably not climbing like that. And it's just like that facet of framework of like this is all you see, but you don't see all the other stuff. But I think being able to give them the exploration of like, well, we know this doesn't work. We can tell you it doesn't work. But we can try to make it possible, maybe with like if it was a specific movement, then maybe we can kind of elaborate on that movement. Maybe we can make some facet of it work, but not be able, like, we might not be able to make the whole thing work. So, like, framing it into, like, I understand you want this really to work, but for like maybe it's like a general safety or like something along those lines, like we might not be able to elaborate to the extent that you want it to work. But if we are able to hone in on like that specific, maybe like particular detail that you really like about this one movement or something, maybe we can like kill two birds with one stone. Like, we can compromise and like come together with like, okay, well, this is not gonna work, but what about this? Is this okay? And that's not necessarily workable for everybody, but like especially if it's like ego, the confidence of like I can do this, I can make it work, but maybe it is okay for them to do that trial and error because like that's how you learn. So
I agree. And, you bring up a good point about being able to communicate with them. And earlier we talked about communication, of that being kind of a huge emotional aspect of the job. When you've noticed that maybe someone's ego has entered the conversation, they're starting to get a little defensive, they're starting to get a little bit overconfident, whether they're new or an experienced setter, this happens to everybody. Like, I
exactly,
feel like that happened to me last week, like,
yeah, yeah.
what kind of communication tips do you normally kind of employ in these situations? Because the same tip is not going to work for every situation, and how do you
Right.
assess what that situation needs? This episode was brought to you by Trango. For decades, Trango has made gear for every kind of climbing, including sport, trad, bouldering, alpine, ice, and mountaineering. Learn more at trango.com.
Um, it might be, I guess it depends on the situation that you're asking. Like maybe it's like a grade consensus of like two people climb the same thing, they have different grade. Um, and maybe if it was along those lines, you can go in with a mindset of like, okay, well, this feels like this to you, but this feels like this to you. But do they correlate? How close do they correlate together? Um, I think being able to, it's hard to communicate like a compromise if people are both activated, because they are defensive. But being like, if bringing in someone else to be able to help with that, like expand that. If you are so, say, like if you have two parties that are super honed in on this specific thing, just taking a step back or bringing an out another unbiased outside opinion and like just getting their take on something might help break that flow of like that knit and grit that you're like or butting heads with. And I think that would be helpful. I know sometimes it's not possible depending on like the teams that you work on.
Yeah.
um it might be nice to just like, if you can't communicate it, maybe it's time to like take a break.
Do
I think it's
something
like,
else and come back.
yeah, exactly. Like if you need, just go drink your coffee, take a, I don't know, like walk away for like 5 seconds, go do a lap around and see what everybody else is doing. Just like clear your head. I think like we can get so wrapped up on like
Absolutely.
ideas. And so,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
And the example that you mentioned about grades, I think
Hmm.
that's a classic point where sometimes ego comes into the chat.
Right.
Wow, I'm talking like a Gen Alpha here, comes into the chat. Like if like here's a personal example. A couple
Mhm.
of weeks ago I climbed something and I remember I was trying pretty hard. I was like, oh my god, this is kind of hard. And I came
Yeah.
down, I'm like, yeah, it feels about V8. I thought the setter
Hmm.
was trying to hit a V8, and two other setters came up and they're like, no, that was V6.
Mm.
And it was just
Hmm.
like a stabbed in my heart. I was like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
god, that's oh wow, I tried so hard on that.
Yeah.
And I immediately felt like the defensiveness comes out. I'm like,
Hmm.
wait, hang on. No, that's not V6. This is exactly
Yeah.
why, not V6. I'm going to tell you about it. And yeah, like, especially when it comes to grades, sometimes, like me in that situation,
Mm.
it, in the moment, it felt like an attack. It was someone saying, yeah,
Right.
no, you're not that strong. It's only V6.
Right.
Yeah. I'm wondering when you sense that kind of tension come up in yourself
Hmm.
or in others, what is your favorite way to kind of reset that moment and go like, they're not trying to insult me. Maybe
Right.
they are. Maybe they are trying to insult you and you just have to
Right.
accept that hey, that's their thing, it has nothing to do with me.
Right. I think for that, it would be, I think I go through this a lot. Like I know I we have a lot of strong people on our crew, and so like I sometimes can feel like, oh well, I'm not that strong. I might have a general basis of like something. But like I'll do my best. I think going with the approach of like, even if I'm like, if I feel like I'm getting defensive because like this is just not the grade that it's supposed to be or something, or like, and I mean like what are grades, but like just the way
Consensus.
that,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
real.
If I'm feeling defensive, I think I would ask. I like to clarify. I'm like, well, why did it feel this way to you? And I would like to like ask like, well, this specific, say like this move in general, like I don't have to do the whole thing. But this one move, maybe point out like it felt really hard to me due to this factor. I wonder if we can figure out a way that could feel similar for you and me, and then we can talk about it. I think viewing it as like, or maybe like redirecting the framework of like how we're viewing the problem and um, why it's not working, why it's feeling so much harder for me, and I feel like that goes into the like, I think we view a lot of like what is span, or like what is body types, like does this fit your body type way better than it does for me, like your height and your strength, or like I'm typically a smaller climber, so like this just feels super expanded for me, and that's very frustrating. I'm gonna get defensive because I can't do it like you do. But I think being able to like reframe that and be like, can we add, or like can we how do we access this the same way that you're going at it, um, might is like maybe the best that I've found that works for me, just by like asking clarifying questions about like, well, this didn't work for me. It's hard, but maybe also being open-minded that I know like this is the hard grade for me, taking that grain of salt in and be like, okay, I understand that I'm not going to be able to do every move on this thing. But also like, this is my opinion. It's feeling really hard, but I get that it's possible. So maybe like framing it into that way.
I think that's a really great point. And it's also, you bring up like body types and strengths and weaknesses. Like if I set a hard slab boulder, I'm going to go grab, the person who's really good at slab to kind of help me
Exactly.
forerun it, right? Like I'm potentially not going to grab the person who is great at power tech to help me
Yeah,
forerun the slab. And there's a chance that the person who would really get at slab is going to think the slab is much easier than the
exactly.
average population. And we have
Right.
to take that into an account, especially when other people say, yeah, this slab is super hard. But the
Right.
person who's good at slab said, what are you talking about? V2 in my gym. That kind of
Yeah,
attitude,
exactly.
right? And that reframing of clarifying questions of why, I think that's
Mhm.
also kind of like a very easy thing to keep in mind on a daily just
Right.
commercial set.
Yeah.
Because like when something doesn't feel hard for me, it blurs
Mhm.
into my mind,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the points that feel hard, maybe the big lock off or maybe the dead point or this jump across that I'm not good at, those things
Right.
stick out in my mind. All those things that I
Mhm.
kind of flowed through, they don't
Mhm.
create an impression. So
Right.
when I talk to someone and they're like, well, the part that you flowed through with a really small box because you're 5'2" felt
Right.
super hard to me.
Right.
And then the second part of the boulder is kind of bigger and more dynamic. That
Mhm.
didn't feel so bad to me. So combine maybe that just diversity of movement and boxes
Mhm.
makes the boulder okay on a whole.
Yeah.
But we are each focused on the parts that we felt really hard or really easy that we just kind
Exactly.
of forget the big picture. Like is
Yeah.
that kind of what you're saying as well? Are we on the
Yeah.
same page?
Yeah, we're on the same page.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Because I feel
Yeah.
like we go through so many. I think we have to think about as setters too. Like, well, this is my strength. Like say like we're smaller. If I'm like also like 5'2", 5'3". So like I mean we have smaller fingers. We love to crimp, right? We like small boxes, crimping, lock offs. When it gets to somebody who's like 6'4" with like plus something, like they're not gonna want to fit into this tiny box that we are,
No.
and they're just like, okay, well, this feels really hard, but we can float it. But I think also keeping in mind like that mindfulness of like, well, this person also climbs really hard, and so like where does that lie into like my opinion of like how do we access this together, but also be mindful of like um, being empathetic about everything that is like the following question of like who are we setting for and why, like what are we asking of them from this climb and stuff. So like I think that question of like who are we setting for is like very big, because if you're setting for like USAC or like comps, then you're just like the demographic you're setting for. Like it's like they're all tiny, they all have small fingers, like they're gonna rock those crimps. But if you're setting for like adults who are just
Adult
free, like
open. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or like even just like a regular gym day, like the basis of like people who are just like coming from the street and coming in, no climbing experience, what do you think they're gonna do? They're not gonna do what you think. Like they're not gonna
Yeah.
have the same strength as you. So like having that empathy of like um just empathy or sympathy of like, okay, well, this is my strength. Someone is not going to view it this way. So I think it's okay to give it some grace of like, it could be a little harder, a little easier. And there's always like wiggle room within that.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with wiggle room. And I think it always, to me, it always boils down to if this climb is big and pinchy and slopey, do we
Right.
then have another climb in the same section that maybe test a
Mhm.
different strength, right? Like,
Right.
I
Mhm.
might find this climb way harder for the grade because
Right.
I don't like this style, I'm not good at this
Hmm.
style, but you give
Hmm.
me a climb in my style of that grade, I'm gonna crush it. So do the
Right.
members or do the competitors that we're setting for have that
Hmm.
same opportunity to lean into their strength and work on their weaknesses? Or is
Right.
every climb in this gym slopey and pinchy? You
Right.
know?
It's all the
Like that's
same.
kind
Yeah.
of exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why we have such like a diverse team. That's why we have team members, right? Like we can rely on them to like produce different product. And so like we if you were the only one setting in this gym, then you're probably going to create the same things over and over again. Out of, like out
Yeah.
of some facet your mind always like does the same, oh, like I'm going to start with two hands and this or, but versus like if you have more than one brain, like multiple people, then like everybody's thinking differently, everybody has their own styles and differences, so
Yeah, and like I often think that people underestimate how a different climbing background plays into this. Like
right.
even let's just talk about a gym ecosystem. Let's not talk about the outdoor
Mhm.
ecosystem for now. My gym has a lot of overhanging terrain, a lot.
Mhm. Okay.
A friend of mine went from my gym to a gym just an hour away, and
Hmm.
that gym has all slab and
Okay.
vert. Like they just don't have a whole. They do have overhanging terrain, but not as much as us.
Right.
And a year goes by, and then I get a chance to set with her again, and suddenly I'm like, I'm sorry, did you just go from a burly compression girl to a slab girl? Like your
Nice.
style has entirely changed, right? So
Yeah.
when we bring all of these people together who maybe this person has climbed in Yosemite for most of their life,
Hmm.
this person grew up bouldering in the southeast, and you bring them
Hmm.
together, I'm like, okay, there's a really good slab climber over here, and then there's a really good burly climber over here.
Right.
So the middle ground of these two might give us the actual consensus because the slab climber is gonna sandbag every slab, and the
Right.
burly climber is gonna sandbag every cave. So
Yeah,
maybe we can
exactly.
find that middle ground of like, oh, what is this climb really?
Right. And
Yeah.
and it's okay to have that like diversity too, because I think that helps us like hone in on like what the product that we are actually producing is. I know like certain places also like different places do different grading scales.
Yeah.
Like some people do like ranges, some people do concrete grades. So
Yeah.
like it really depends, but like I think giving the option or like the opportunity for the climber that you're setting for, like to have that variety, I think that's great.
Yeah.
So
Like what is a V4 if not just a human-made cosmic concept that we've somehow been like, oh, these things are V4, but these things are not V4.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
really hard. Exactly. The more voices, the better.
Yeah.
I think I also want to chat with you about because like we've been talking about how we manage our own ego, but
Hmm.
like we said, this is an emotional job.
Yeah.
Sometimes it hurts, sometimes you feel good about it. And
Mm-hmm.
managing ego isn't always about controlling your own reactions. It can
Mm-hmm.
happen around you because setting is a team product. Like we have a team,
Right.
like you said, we have a team, we have diverse voices, and diverse voices are going to clash. That's the whole point of it.
Exactly.
Do you believe that it is a shared responsibility of a team to manage each other's emotions and egos and vulnerabilities? Or do you think that's more of an individual task?
I think I think it's upon the team just because like you can do so much for yourself. But if you hit a breaking point, just because like this job is so mentally like it is mentally taxing. It's
It
physically
is.
taxing and like in that with those two combined, you're gonna have some emotional like taxation
You're
whether
gonna
you
have a
like it or
bad
not.
day.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like being able to rely on other people, not like just like leaning on them, but like say like if a crew boss, like if you're in charge, like if you're chief or you're just in charge for that day, if you already notice that like someone's having a bad day, like maybe being like helping them out a little bit more, like giving them the support that they might need and they don't know how to ask for. I think you work with people so often that you're probably going to notice that, oh, this person seems a little bit less talkative today or like a little bit more down. Or like they'll tell you that they're like having a bad day. So
Yeah.
like just being a little bit more conscious of like, okay, well, he or she or they like needs extra help, extra support. And I think like I had like a previous example would be we have a coworker that they were having a hard set day. I think they were having great consensus on like a boulder that they ran, and this person just got a little bit riled up because he had to continuously explain why it felt like this to him, and so our crew boss was able to just like notice that, and he's like, okay, well, he's about to like not blow, but like maybe he's gonna have a bad day if you like.
This is the breaking
Yeah,
point. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So like, but he noticed that, and so like he stepped up and he was like, okay, well, what's the problem here? And then like was able to address that, like, okay, well, let's just green tape that. That looks like it's good to go. Like we don't need to like smooth out anymore if like you guys are on the same page, but you just don't know how to tell yourself or like
Yeah.
tell each other like that
Yeah.
you're on the same page. So like it's like just like a extra support system. Like I mean that's why we have so many people we can rely on. So if you're fighting the battle by yourself, it's a very like long, like it's like
Lonely experience.
yeah, like and you might be circling, you might be spiraling.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
you can get honed in on that idea. So like maybe bringing an outsider like could help progress. It would just like help push the day along or like push you out of that a little bit and like open up. Like whether like you can see it or not, but it might just like be able to move forward. So
This episode was brought to you by Approach. Founded by a multi-gym owner, Approach develops software to manage any climbing facility. Learn more at approach.app. What is your favorite way of, let's say you're just wandering your gym and you look over, you're like, okay, Holly looks like she's about to punch somebody. What is your favorite way of like checking in with a person? What kind of tips do you have? Like, how do you approach this potentially soon to be violent Holly over here?
uh, I guess it depends on I guess like this is like during like a work day, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah.
Like
Just during a work
okay.
day, you look over and you're like, wow, Holly's not doing too good.
I mean I'll probably like approach like what's like maybe like ask you what the issue is or like what are you content like what are you honed in on like what is like so you're so fixated on and then like um maybe you just need a break. And so like if you need an extra body, like throw me at it. Like let me see if I can like help bring a solution. Or like so like maybe giving you a break will help you or because you can't visual or maybe you can visualize it, but like because you can't see in person like what's going on, maybe seeing someone else do it might help like bring you out of a hole or like be able to give you a different solution that you're not seeing. I think that extra viewpoint might help. Maybe that might help you get out of your bubble. Or like an extra friendly like hey, you can come and like work on this with me and then we can come back might be just exactly what you need. So
Honestly, I really like the second one because I do think
mhm.
that setters tend to tunnel vision,
Yeah.
especially if maybe we're already having a bad day. Maybe,
Mhm.
our dog threw up in the house that morning and you had to clean it up, and maybe you
Right.
got into a fight with somebody the day before, so you have all these bad energy. And I'm like, I need to make this paddle work. And I'm just
Yeah.
staring and, maybe circling the drain. And if you come
Yeah.
over and you're like, hey, do you want to come work on this fun moderate V3 with me? And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Like it
Yeah.
does kind of help people bring out of the funk. I've also found that sometimes we forget about our physiological needs. I'll be like,
Yeah.
when was the last time you drank water? When
Yeah.
was the last time you had a snack? Like, do you
Yeah.
want my almonds? Do you want my snack
Yeah.
bar?
Just
Like, those are
something.
exactly like super
Yeah.
simple things that people tend to forget about when they're kind of
Mhm.
circling the drain.
Yeah, I think like it just like getting them out of like that fixation is like maybe better. Like,
Yeah.
like you always felt like just in general life, you're like, if you're staring at a problem, you're like, it's hard to fix it, right? But like, if you take a step back, that's taking that step back, taking a breath or whatever you need to do, like that can help you reevaluate. Like, oh, like I just got too tunnel visioned here, but if I took a step back and worked something else, your brain can get like a break or like relax a little bit from like whatever you're fixated on, and then you're like, okay, I can tackle that now because I refreshed. You just need a refresher,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. You refresh, you worked on something else, you had a snack, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I've been thinking about this recently. When you're looking at newer setters in the
Mhm,
industry, potentially, especially those who are not widely represented, minority
mhm,
setters, gender minorities in this industry, I feel like being unheard
mhm.
is a pretty big aspect of what people have talked about as a barrier to entry. Like I don't feel heard in my team, or I
Mm,
don't feel heard among white men who are all
mhm.
5'10" and I'm over here being 5'2". I think these are kind of common themes of being
Right,
unheard, but I also think that there is a time when this is not necessarily not hearing somebody, but it's just that you have a different opinion. Like everyone's entitled to
right.
have their own opinion. For you, what signals the difference between someone feeling unheard and then someone just disagreeing with each other? Like, how do you bridge that difference between making sure that someone feels welcome in the space, but also making sure that they understand, opinion is opinion. This entire job is based on your opinion versus my opinion. Like, at this level,
Right,
right? You think yes, I think no. Like,
right.
yeah, how
I
do you bridge
think
that?
I think being like having a conversation about it. I know we've talked about conversation a lot, but
It's a huge
like
aspect of
being
the job.
yeah, I think like just being able to iterate like, okay, well, why did it feel this way to you versus like this is how it feels for me. And like being able to like clarify how it's feeling for you. And like that alone like can help like give perspective of like to somebody else like because they don't know what you're feeling or how you feel on this climb or something, like it's like very it is a hard bridge, like just having that skill to like communicate what you want or what you need in that moment. But I think being able to like if you can articulate how you felt while you're climbing it, and then giving like specific, maybe it doesn't have to be specific, but like just being able to explain why um that movement or like specific skill sets just like it could help, um maybe like it might not bridge that gap but it might give perspective to the other person. So so
I think
mm,
maybe a follow up question is that is it, it kind of bleeds into the question earlier about is it our responsibility to
mm,
manage each other's emotions on a team? Is also, is it our responsibility to bridge that gap, or
mhm,
does it become just like a I feel this way, you feel this way, we can agree to disagree, and that's okay
right.
situation? And like where that line is drawn, in a
Mhm,
commercial set, it might be a different context versus
right,
in a competition. I might be more inclined to say, oh, the chief said to change this, I'm going to change it. Like,
right. I think
I
I
trust my
think
chief.
Yeah, I think there it can have like both of those can live simultaneously almost, like
Yeah.
you can have that like, oh, like that my chief said this, but like maybe you can also maybe like you can communicate that a little bit differently, you can change up the wording. Sometimes changing up wording can help like give more context of like just like a different way of saying something, right? So like
Do you have an
can
example of that? Because I like that
mm,
idea. It's always about the
trying to
tone and
think.
how you communicate,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
like to think about it. Um, maybe like say like a setter really likes to be um they're what they're looking for to feel like their product is good and like is like the wording of like I like it or you like it something, right? If but like you're using like, oh, like that route was good or like, and so like we'll elaborate on why it was good, like maybe say like I like the way you use this, and then like that can reframe, okay, well, maybe this person just can the way their brain is framed is like, okay, well, this word, maybe they're so attached to this word or something that they're like, okay, well, that cues, okay, everything is good. But like, I mean, framing it that way, like, even if it's good, why was it good, right? But I think that example of like, not everybody will be okay with that route was great, it flowed great, or it was good, it was a great boulder, and then versus like, oh, the way you use this undercling to this cross or something, that was like really cool. And so that specific like language might change someone's perspective of like how they view the situation.
This episode was brought to you by Onsite. Out of Montreal, Onsite builds climbing walls for schools, rec centers, private homes, and full commercial climbing gyms. Learn more at onsite.com. This actually reminds me of a previous conversation I had on a podcast where a guest, I'll link the episode in the show notes, Ethan Paris, he mentioned that sometimes he would say that a boulder is cute, like, and he means it as a compliment. It's a cute boulder. But my initial reaction when I first heard that is I kind of think of a condescending tone of like, oh yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
And my initial impression of like, why would you say that about my boulder? That's kind of mean. Or like, you're being super condescending. So it's just like our different interpretations of the word cute. Like, I found it condescending, exactly. But he was trying to give me a compliment of saying that this boulder is super cute.
Right. I think like people have different communication styles. So like people attach certain things to like their way their brain likes or does dislike things. So like being able to like reframe, rephrase certain aspects can really like push somebody to like have a better day or have a worse day, like just being able to like know, it's hard to know about that unless you know the person, right? If you're on a brand new crew and you don't know anybody, that's definitely harder. But if you've been working with like a crew for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, you know the insides and outs of this person, if they're like their quirks, their like emotional states most of the time, or like, like just little facets. But like if you notice like this specific thing, you're like, well, with this specific person, I can do this, and that would make their day a whole lot better versus like if you just kept to your own language of like, yeah, that was good job, but you're meaning it as a compliment. And then the other, like if you just said like, I like the way you did this, and then like that could make the world of a difference for someone else.
Huge difference. And I like that you mentioned working with different crews and how that can kind of change the dynamic a bit, because I had a experience where I think I was describing a boulder and I said one of the moves in the middle felt extremely aggressive. And this person took it as a compliment, but what I was trying to say is that move stood out as much harder than the rest of the boulder, and nothing got changed about it. We just moved on, and I didn't think twice about it. And then later I come in and I realized, okay, everyone is doing every other part of the boulder and everyone falls right here. This is the bottleneck that's dropping everybody. And then he was like, you said it was aggressive. I figured that was a compliment. I was like, oh man, that was just, I didn't find the right wording, because he wanted it to be a powerful move. So when I said it was aggressive, he was like, yes, I did it.
Right. I think we struggle like as setters to like clarify that. Like
for sure, 100%.
We don't clarify like why, like the way certain words like say if it was aggressive, right? You're like, oh, what does that aggressive mean? What are you wanting, or why do you want it to be aggressive? Or not, maybe not why in that aspect, but like what about it is aggressive, right? Are you wanting it to be, what are you testing in that aspect?
Like are you testing the strengths? Are you testing one-on pulling power? What are you testing here?
I think it's like clarifying that, and then you're like, okay, well, I don't think this is doing that, or like maybe we have to be a little bit more blunt or like dumb it down. Sometimes I feel like people use a lot of strong words, and then like people are already like tired or something. Say like if it was a comp week, you're like day 3, you're like super tired. My brain's not going to be able to like comprehend like like maybe I can comprehend aggressive, but like this person's like, yeah, aggressive's great, but then
Great, yes.
yeah, but maybe in that aspect it would be like maybe that person would have been like, wait, when you say aggressive, like, are you meaning it this aggressive or like I think like knowing it's hard to know when to ask those clarifying questions of like to ask for more details.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's also, you bringing up how tired you are at the end of a comp week.
Hmm.
Your skin's wrecked, you're 5 days on, you're
Right.
dying, you haven't gotten any good sleep. And it kind of just goes out the window.
Yeah.
Even when you do mean well, it can just slip out the window. And I think it's,
Hmm.
you mentioned earlier about leaning on each other is just
Hmm.
being the person that you wish you had next to you when you're just this close to crashing out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, just stripping your own boulder and quitting.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is for sure
And
hard.
I think like with that, like when even when we well, it's different in a competition setting because like
For sure.
sometimes you do have to do that like and it's last minute, right?
Yeah. It's just high
But if
stakes,
it's
high pressure.
like yeah, exactly. But if it's like in a commercial setting, you're like, oh, wait, 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 you have to like hold the horses, because like maybe your trash is someone's treasure. Is like what I think. Like like you might hate this route or like this boulder so hard, but then like random people or on your team too. They'll be like, that route wasn't that bad. I don't know what you're talking about. And you're like,
Yeah.
that route was trash. But it's someone else's like bread and butter. So they're
Exactly.
gonna love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it always surprises me when I feel like I put in a lot of effort into a route and I look at the
mhm,
comment card from the members and it's just X, 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 X. I hate
mhm.
this. And I'm like, what? And
Yep.
I slam up something that I think is the worst climb ever and it just heart
Gets the
shapes
most
everywhere.
yeah.
And I'm like, how?
Yeah, it's like I put a lot of work into that. And then yeah, it's like
Yeah,
you're
they hate
just
it.
you just love yep, they hate it. So
Yeah, it's really hard to tell, and I do agree
yeah.
that like putting down the perspective that even if you hate it, it could be
Hmm.
someone's favorite climb of the week. It could be
Exactly.
someone's first of the grade. That's
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
Your own emotions is not what it's not the only thing that matters here. If it's
Yeah.
someone's success of the week and you made someone feel
Hmm.
really strong and good and yeah,
Exactly. Like if you made like a super soft boulder, sure, it's soft, but you're giving, I don't know, like you're giving them a win to like keep coming back.
exactly,
So like,
yeah,
like not like I guess like with us, like you can just like punish them later if you really want to, but like you can just
exactly,
like yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
So
and when it comes to like soft grades, like if you're
mhm.
trying to break into a grade,
Yeah.
you most of the time you're starting on the softer end of it, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. Yeah.
That's just how it is. I'm not going to go and find a
Exactly.
benchmark or the hard
Right.
version of this grade if I've never done it before. Like I'm
Right.
going to start on the one move wonder.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess like that bleeds into like a lot of like ego with climbing. Well, like ego has a lot of like festering feelings in climbing. So like it's like the way people climb, they could either like chase grades or like um they are finding like the softest things just to like feel that ego. But I think like there's always like healthy management of that, of like whether it's within yourself or like within your community or your team, like you can maybe someone needs to check you. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's like they're there in place to like maybe help you like keep going, like your drive. That because that could be your driving factor of like why you're climbing, or like why you're setting. So, but if it's leaning towards like an unhealthy way, maybe like being able to like realize that it's unhealthy and then like think of it or like rephrasing that into a different light. So
Yeah, like if I go up to you and I'm like, "Hey Zoe, if I don't climb V10, I'm a piece of trash." And you'd be
right.
like, "Whoa, Holly,
Yeah, yeah,
what?" Let's
yeah.
try to reframe that a little bit.
Exactly. It's like,
Yeah,
hey, it's like that's a lot of negativity right now. So
exactly.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it's okay to want to climb V10. That's very
Exactly.
fine, but don't call yourself a piece of trash.
Yeah, yeah. It's like and we're gonna get there. It's okay, it's a
Yeah,
one step at a time.
one step
But
at a
yeah.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm kind of coming up to end of the list of questions I prepared for
Mhm.
you.
All
But
right.
I do have one more that I want to talk to you about. It's like we talk so much about individual management of ego and looking at others and how to help each other out. And earlier I also asked, what is your ideal mindset
Mhm.
going into a setting day, the perfect one? What about on a team dynamic side? Like, what does a perfect team look like to you? Like, if you could
Um,
handpick fantasy draft every bit and piece of the team, what does that
mm,
healthy emotional team look like to you?
I think a team that is able to be lighthearted to like in a way, like you don't take things too seriously, but you're able still able to get the work done, right? Like if everybody has like some kind of humor or like if you get too stressed, you have a dance party, like it's like kind of like a self-care free kind of thing. But that would probably be pretty ideal. I know like competitions and some setting days are just like stressful. So like having somebody who can like bring in like some lightheartedness or like just like a positive light is like always nice to have. And then like a lot of snacks. but like there's always somebody that's gonna bring snacks. So like you always have your snack person. But like if you can find the nice like medium of like people who you surround yourself with that really care about the job and like are serious enough to also like get so they get the job done but also are able to like play around and goof off with you in like a even in a serious setting. Like I think those people would be like an ideal setting. Like I would want those people on my crew if I or like I would want to be on that crew just because like they're taking something so stressful and like serious, but they're also being able to take like a facet of like freedom and like
Free
light.
spirited, yeah.
Yeah, like I think that like can add a lot of like flair to everybody. Like you don't have to dread this comp or anything. You can like go in there and like look forward to like all of my friends are here or like I've never met you but you seem like a really cool person. So like I'm excited to work with you kind of thing. So like
Yeah, I agree because I think that sometimes we forget that we do this job because we love rock climbing and we
yeah.
love the community. And when it gets like, we all have bad days, like,
Hmm.
and when we are having that bad day, I want the person next to me to remind me that like I do this job because I love climbing and
Yeah,
because I love
exactly.
creativity and I love creating
Hmm.
things and watching people enjoy my creations. And
Right.
again, love them or hate them, I can watch someone hate my creation. That's totally fine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can also be able to like tell you that, oh, this person hates it, but that's okay,
That's
like
okay.
yeah, yeah. You can share that vulnerability with that person and just be like, all right, we can both be able to like enjoy this person hating on this thing together, Like it's like kind of like a communal thing, but
Yes, yeah, yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like
Like,
having a community with you or something that just makes it a little bit easier to digest.
yes, I love
So
that. Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like we've
yeah,
touched on so many points about the
yeah.
emotional side of route setting, and at the same time, it feels like I can go for 3 hours on this topic.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly. I feel
yeah,
like there's not like a real can't it's like it's a never-ending conversation. It's like an
exactly.
ongoing like, there's always different facets, different opinions, and I bet like there's always like other people have different things to say, like that's just like one facet of like what we think the ego or something is within our setting times. And so like there's gonna be it's such a broad like I think ego is such a broad topic in general. So like
For sure.
there's
Yeah,
so it's really hard to just like hone in on like one.
I agree. I agree. Well, thank you so much for chatting with
Yeah,
me,
thank
Zoe.
you.
This has been an
Yeah.
awesome conversation. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening, sharing, and supporting another episode of the Impact Driver podcast. A huge thank you to our guests for joining us and sharing your time and insight, as well as to our sponsors for making these conversations possible. New episodes come out monthly, and you can find past conversations wherever you listen. Be sure to check out the show notes for relevant links and subscribe to CBJ at climbingbusinessjournal.com to never miss a new episode. If you'd like to nominate someone as a future guest, suggest a topic, or reach out with questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me and our producers by emailing info@climbingbusinessjournal.com or by filling out the pitch form in our show notes. The Impact Driver Podcast is a production of the Climbing Business Journal. I'm your host, Holly Chen. This episode was edited and produced by myself, Scott Rennick, Joe Robinson, and Megan Cheek, with theme music by Devin Dabney. Thanks again for tuning in.